That's very sweet. Hello, and welcome to Property Matters. 40 minutes of lively chat and debate around all matters property, designed to be of interest to people who have an interest in property. Property Matters is supported by Fairview International Property Consultancy and Town and Country Property Auctions London. Now, we've some really interesting topics for discussion this morning, and as always, we'd welcome your thoughts and your comments. Just post them in the comments below the video, and they'll appear as if by magic on the screen in front of us here. As you can also email us at our email address, propertymatterstv@gmail.com, should you have any questions or any topics that you'd like us to cover in future shows. And as always, joining us on Property Matters this morning is our property expert, Joe Joshi. Good morning, Joe.
Morning, Paul. A fun-packed program. I think very interesting questions raised by some of our viewers, which I'm looking forward for you to throw at me and see where we go with that.
It's interesting because it's a really dynamic time in the property market. I mean, the world is changing dramatically, and as a result of that, the property industry is faced with some real challenges.
Yes, and I keep going back to time and time again that it's one of the key points in our lives. It's really a hub. Property has a huge space in our whole structure, from investment to living at home or owning your own home. And to be perfectly honest with you, there's never been a better time to invest in property, in spite of where we are in life in general, especially when with the virus and the changes that we all have to adapt to. The market is good for property, and for anyone that is looking to buy, in my mind, there's never been a better time to invest in property.
And to that end, let's take a look at our first story. Now, this is somebody who emailed us in the week and asked us if we would cover this off, Joe. This is the first-time buyers scheme, the new Help to Buy scheme, which is up and running from the 16th of December. Now, this is for new home buyers only, isn't it? For new homes.
Yeah, so the government obviously have got to motivate the market whilst they are spending heavily in one side, trying to make sure that we're all protected the best possible way. And I'm sure everybody will have their point of view on that. The other side is that they've got to balance the economy, and obviously the Chancellor and the Prime Minister are working together to try and make sure that the best opportunities are set out and left for the people that want to buy. So in terms of the first-time buyers, with whom there is no real property market in the way the system works in the United Kingdom, you have to step up. And historically, it's always been that first-time buyers are the first people on the run of the ladder. That's them, and then it sort of moves up. And as people move up and out, they tend to go up the chain and ultimately to their home of their dreams, perhaps, which is going to be the detached country house, etc., that they want to sort of ultimately be in. Now, so the government, I mean, prior to the scheme that has been recently announced, there was a scheme for Help to Buy in place. And I assume that in view of the fact that the crisis have created problems for perhaps some developers, they have decided to take on the challenge for themselves. So the scheme is a great opportunity. When we talked about lenders not allowing a certain amount of lending to happen, depending on how much deposit they do, this is where the government have stepped up and said, they would provide a facility of 20%. The buyer would have to find 5%, and of course the balance will be taken on a 75% mortgage from a high street lender or a lender of your choice. So I think it's a great scheme, great opportunity, and something that every first-time buyer should now jump on board. With a stamp duty holiday that is available until March, which is being bantered around, that is highly likely the Chancellor may have to extend that beyond, because the system itself, in terms of the conveyancing system and the interest and the demand in property has actually created a problem in the process, which is a process that is somewhat archaic, but subsequently. So when you think you got it all right in one side, there's always one thing that buggers it up, and in this case, it's going to be the conveyancing system. And of course, that blame will lie further down where people are not in their offices, working from home, etc., etc., etc. So, yeah, but for any first-time buyer, if there's ever a time for you to consider stepping on that first rung of the ladder, I would strongly urge that you take that step now, take the opportunity that the government is offering you, look at the 5% that you can get, which I'm sure bank of mum and dad or savings from mum and dad could probably assist, and try and get onto the ladder. And of course, we are here to help you. You could always contact us at Fairview International, or you just drop us a line at Property Matters, and we can direct you and guide you through to the brokers, and try and help you raise the mortgage and look at the properties that are coming on the market. And we have some of our own properties that are coming on the market, which will obviously have the same schemes available, and we're only too delighted to see if we can't put you on that first run of the ladder.
Yes, because it really is quite a good deal, because the equity loan is interest-free for the first 5 years as well, Joe.
Absolutely, and I know we always say there's no such thing as a free lunch, but this one has a small snack that might be free, so you may as well just take it on and start it, and say to yourself, well, thank you very much, I'll take that 20% for now for 5 years. I think it's a notional £1 a year that they kind of have to take from you, but it's like a peppercorn thing. But do look at the small print. Happy to discuss that individually. Anybody wants to sort of raise that with us. And of course, all mortgages are subject to status. It's not a given that you're going to get a mortgage of the 75%, but there's a higher chance that with the 20% that is offered by the government over the 5-year period, it's definitely going to get you onto that first run of the ladder. And again, I would just urge all first-time buyers to seriously consider their positions and try and have a look at what can be bought.
Yeah, and that 20% is 40% in London as well. Let's just have a look at the caps on this equity loan scheme, Joe. So here we've got the pricing, the price cap. So this is up to the value of. But what I thought was really interesting here is looking at the regional divisions, Joe. So cheapest, looking at the price cap at least, the price cap is the cheapest, or the lowest price, should I say, 186,100 in the northeast. But if you then come down to the southeast, the one from the bottom there, 437,600. That suggests that prices are half in the northeast what they are in the south.
Absolutely, Paul, and that's the new investment territory, isn't it? And so if you've got the facility that the government is offering at the 20%, or as you say, 40% in London, then you've got to take a view that, can you go further afield? And so people are beginning to sort of rethink their strategy and say, well, I can travel. And as time goes on, when the HS2 comes on board, and the finish of the Crossrail as time goes on, all of these things are going to be more achievable and more attainable for people. And so I don't think it really matters a great deal, other than obviously your conveniences where you are, but certainly a step on, whether it's in the Midlands or the North, is the right thing to do for first-time buyers. And it's a snowball effect, Paul. What happens is, if the first-time buyer is actually buying, then people up the chain are beginning to sort of think, well, actually, I've wanted to move for some time from my 2-bed flat or a 1-bed flat to a 2-bed flat, and from 2-bed flat to maybe an end of terrace house, and from an end of terrace house maybe to a semi-detached, or maybe into the country. And that's the way the system has always worked in the United Kingdom. It is a process that allows people to simultaneously move up the chain and achieve their dreams, and maybe move to the next home that they want.
So helptobuy.gov.uk is the address. We had it on the screen a moment ago. People can apply from the 16th of December, so it's not open yet. And that means that they'll be able to move in from April the 1st, which means they'll also get the benefit of the stamp duty holiday. And And interestingly, to support that regional difference, Joe, we've got some figures here on the average numbers of days that properties are on the market, and it certainly seems to favour the north. The only one bucking the trend is Waltham Forest, which has an average number of days on the market of 24. But if you're in Scotland or Northwest or Wales, or certainly in the West Midlands, seems to be a place where people are very interested. It looks like, I mean, you're obviously very centrally located in the UK, so you can pretty much go anywhere from the West Midlands, and perhaps that's why there's so many logistical jobs, perhaps warehousing jobs and things like that, appearing in that part of the world. But prices seem to be quite reasonable. Fastest selling brands being 150 to 200,000 on those properties.
And we've seen that evidence time and time again, more recently, even through the auction world, that the opportunities in the sort of the lower brackets are being taken up quicker and faster, and perhaps sometimes the heavier ticket items are slightly taking longer, purely because people are conscious about having to spend the amount of money that they do. But go back again to the point that the government has offered this scheme, starts on the 16th of December. There's a great opportunity that people, first-time buyers, should take up. All young first-time buyers should really look at that. Credit is the main thing. You must check your credit, because obviously every mortgage is subject to credit, to status, subject to credit. Again, we will be happy to sort of guide and help where possible. We need to do that. But the north is not that far, and you're absolutely right about the warehouse jobs and so forth, which I'm sure is an area that we will cover in a short while. And that means that jobs types are changing because of what COVID has done to our way of life and the things that we actually now do and how we do those.
And I guess what we're saying here really is that if you feel that you can look to relocate, that's probably going to give you even more of a chance to get on this ladder.
I think the relocation thing has happened, in all honesty, a lot this year, because two things. One, of course, the pandemic. The second thing is that it's given time for people to actually readjust themselves, their lives, their thoughts, their process, and how can I do better? Because it's, you've had time off. We had no choice under the first lockdown, although the sun was out at the time, and it meant that we were all out exercising a bit more. It's a bit cold out there now, so it's not the same. So it might be that you're sitting down there and thinking, well, in this particular location, can I move out? Can I travel from there? Does my job allow me to work from home more so than it does? So all of those things are crucial in that decision making, and subsequently, that is what's happening in terms of the prices moving in the areas that you brought up on our screen, from the Midlands up to the north. Because at the end of the day, we are in the United Kingdom. It's just that I think we all got used to living in the
I think I've lost you there, Joe.
things have changed.
I think we've lost Joe. Joe, if you'd like to dial me in again, I'll see if I can get you back up on the screen. That will be useful, I think. So, yes, so the Help to Buy scheme, we were looking at that just a moment ago, helptobuy.gov.uk, and that is the address for the Help to Buy details. Let's see if we can get Joe back on the line. One of the things, of course, about live programs is that sometimes the internet doesn't necessarily give us all the help that we need. So, Joe, if you can give us a call back, we'll see if we can get you back on the screen. Let's move on to another story and see if we can. I think we have Joe back. Are you with us here, Joe, now? Can we hear you?
I am. Yeah.
Fantastic. I don't quite know what happened there, but are you back? Can you hear me okay?
Technology.
Yes.
Just
Well, you're just
about.
being
You're a
quiet
bit
deliberately
faded.
to make me get worried. I think we're having a
Yeah.
problem with you there, Joe, because I think we've got a problem with your internet.
My internet is all right. Shall we? I can reboot it, shall I?
No,
That will
no,
really
no,
take
no.
us off air.
Long as you're moving, you're okay. Oh, live programs, lovely. Okay, can you hear me, Joe?
I am,
Great.
kind of.
Okay, well, lovely. Let's just move on as if everything's fine.
That's what happens
I'm,
live.
I'm sure nobody will notice the join.
Ah, can you hear me?
Okay, so let's just have a look at this next story. This is a couple of interesting stories from
Can you hear
Joe.
me?
I can hear you. Yes, yes, you're here. Are you there?
Uh,
Are you there,
good.
Joe?
Okay. I
Uh,
am.
Not quite sure why you're. It's obviously. Are you there?
I don't know what's going on, Paul.
That's
Yeah,
it.
I am.
I
I
think
am.
you're. Are you? Are you there now? I think you're okay, actually.
I am. I
Good.
am. I'm
Excellent.
here.
Okay. Let's hope. Hopefully, we can move on. Okay. So let's get on with our next story. This is from Joanna Burke, who's reporting in the Evening Standard. Talking about Peacocks and Jaeger going into administration. And she's basically saying that it's an interesting situation for both landlords and retailers because although the landlords seem to have been portrayed as greedy for wanting to keep very high rents that have been perhaps relevant in previous years, and yet at the same time, retailers are pushing back hard and looking for discounts on rent, and some of them even looking for large discounts on their rent, even though they're particularly profitable. It's an interesting time on the high street, as we talked about last week, Joe.
Yes. But it's the hub of your town, and if the high street isn't doing the job it's doing, then naturally people will get in what has a way of shopping was changed by commercial landlords. In all honesty, they decided to have out of town shopping facilities which still exist, and easier parking, be available to maybe smaller businesses, and that has now changed again. And the reason why it's changed is because we're now doing online shopping, and so with online shopping, there's the is with the town actually go down into the high street and start. Are you having problems with my hearing again?
Yes, yes, you're glitching in and out, unfortunately. I'm not quite sure whether. I hope you've got your Wi-Fi on, and you're not on 4G or something.
Yeah, Wi-Fi is on. Yeah, the Wi-Fi is
Good.
on.
Okay.
No.
All right. Well, let's.
Let me
You seem to
just
be okay
just
at the
give me a
moment, so
second. I'll just check it again.
let's battle through, shall we? Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm happy to battle through. And
Jolly good. So what's interesting is that
I'm still here.
yeah, that's fine. What we discovered, what we talked about last week, Joe, in fact, was the fact that landlords, we said who would want to be a commercial property landlord last week, and what's interesting is that there's some information come out this week, and what I'm finding really fascinating about how our own lives are evolving in a pandemic, how the property industry is having to be equally as dynamic in the way that it looks at its own evolution. And this piece again by Joanna Burke in the Evening Standard talks about how the commercial landlords have already looked for other opportunities, and indeed last year started buying up warehouse space, logistics space, particularly in the south of London. Southeast rental growth is 1.7 to 1.8% on that kind of property. And it had historically been a relatively depressed market as people looked for more global HQ type buildings. But they realised that, particularly with the high street, the retail sector, that if they're not going to be in shops and on the high street, then they're going to be online, and that requires logistics. So one assumes, Joe, that this is a good time to get involved in property in terms of logistics and rental warehouse space. Are you there?
Well, you would have seen if you've taken a travel down the M1. I am.
Yeah. Okay.
I am. I'm here. Okay. A bit of a one. So if that's being live, I suppose, Paul. This tells you we do this every Sunday morning. We get up in the morning and do this live. So that's the pitfall of going live. But going back to your question about logistics, if you've recently traveled up and down the M1 or any of the major arteries around us, you will see that big housing with hundreds and thousands of are being taken up by people like H&M and Amazon and so forth, because there now is different of trucks coming back and forward from depot and center points in order to try and give you the service that we all now crave for through the online portals that are available. So property is always and will be a continuous invest. It doesn't matter which way that changes. We've got to try and see how that would work. My sister has just said to me I should turn the camera off and adjust the volume. So I'm going to try and do that, because that's, she does these online things all the time. So I'll take a little bit of advice from her, because she's always chatting to Paris or something. So I'll do that in a second when you raise the next question. But property is never commercial property. Commercial landlords may feel that at the moment the high street, the retail market is the one that they're suffering from, but they're gaining definitely on warehousing and logistics all over the country.
Indeed. And yes, so the next section we were going to talk about, Joe, was here from the same article, that and the reason that the landlords are moving over to warehouse property is because there's been an absolute drop-off in the amount of rental leasing, particularly in the capital. In central London, in the second quarter of this year, 1.2 million square foot was being leased. However, that's a drop of 57% on the previous quarter, and 68% lower than the quarter two, or the equivalent quarter last year. So it's very clear that they're going to have to diversify into logistics and those sort of areas, because it does really seem that the whole idea of working from home has caught on far more than people thought.
Yeah, so we've seen that time and time again, Paul, as time goes on. Over the recent years, the government obviously had some change our behavior and the way we were going to be thinking, or the way they've made us start to think. So some years back, they brought in permitted development rights, and that meant that it was allowing for office space to be converted into residential. One of the problems every successive government has had is that they haven't been able to fulfill their quota of housing that is required in the United Kingdom. So one way was to turn old offices that were not used into residential, and we saw a huge influx of offices converted into residential. Now it's actually only endorsed what they have obviously had in mind before, and that is that they have started to see that in central London, people have been able to move out from home. Our way of life has changed, and subsequently there's going to be a lot of office space that becomes empty. For the permitted development rights scheme available, they will be looking to convert some of those office spaces that is becoming surplus requirement into residential, and inviting people and giving the first time buyer in the button. So, there is a plan there. It's just that we probably haven't been privy to it. But as time goes on and it gets unfolded, it's becoming more and more clear that this was the pandemic has hurt and left a lot of people without family members, which they've lost and so forth. The underlying issue is that there is a tsunami coming of change, and change is happening in rapidly, in more ways than we can actually imagine.
And where do you think, Joe, this is all going to leave us 12 months from now? If you had to have a crystal ball, I guess we'd all be earning a lot more money than we are now if we kind of knew the real answer to these questions. But it's an interesting debate, isn't it, to have? What do you think the future will look like a year from now, property-wise?
Well, I did try and get my crystal ball out and become Mystic Joe rather than Mystic Meg on that one, and see if I could work out the future. But if I was that good, I would have got last Friday's lottery numbers. But unfortunately, that didn't happen either. And so the answer to that question is, Paul, that we will continue to play the guessing game. But what has been very clear in this year is what we are not all aware of, and that is the massive change that has gone on. We think, the way we do things, all of those things have become huge in the way that we want to achieve our goals. And I go back to that little saying of mine time and time again, that property is the hub of our life. And whether we buy in London, whether we buy in the Midlands, or we're buying in the north of England, without that home, as they say, Englishman's home is castle, and all the other puns that we can come up with. As far as I'm concerned, it is very, very important to have that base. Our wish and want in this country has always been the ultimate ownership of our home. There is nothing like time, bad time. Consider this pandemic as a bad time, but it's nice for those that have had the home. It's unfortunate for those that are homeless. But the opportunities are here. The opportunities are given. And it's just the case of, taking them and trying to adapt with them. We are not in control of that end journey in terms of what the government may have in plan, but we are in control of what our own journeys are about. Go and find a home first time.
I think I got most of that. It's going in and out. Let's just battle on. We've got one more topic to cover, and then we are at the end of our time. As always, it's going fast. Joe, we have touched on the method of sale that is auction a couple of times in the past, but I mean, these are dynamic times, and this is a relatively new way of looking at doing a transaction. Not in terms of its history, but in terms of it becoming more popular in recent months and years. And I think looking at Joe's face, we've probably lost him there, in truth. Oh, no, you are there. You are there. Yeah.
I was waiting to see if you could find me there.
Go on then, fire away. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I got the question. I got the question. So the answer to that question, Paul, is the system. It's the method. We are always and have 99.9% used to what we call private, the local the best, that the right thing happens, the right money happens, and the right process happens. And with that in mind, but the method of sale by auction is separately on another program, because I think it is both investors and for home sellers to understand that there is an alternative. And also in terms of time is the key thing with the method of sale in terms of auction, because you can see, if you just take on board the current situation, we were given an opportunity to 31st of March for a stamp duty holiday. The system as it stands is so archaic that people are scared that they're not going to make that deadline, and subsequently are not going to be able to lose that. And that has to change. And that, I mean, it's been trying to change for 40 years. But obviously it works for the people that are in it. Change for buyers or the sellers, because they're the ones that have to have a prolonged, long-term process, which can be 6 months to a year sometimes, before they actually move from the date they start. Christmas, New Year's is always a good time when people actually sit down and think, well, you know what, next year I'm going to move. But following Christmas, their circumstances haven't allowed them. And the method of sale by auction will allow them to do that. We will cover that separately.
Okay, Joe. Well, I think the technology rather than the time has beaten us this week. So I think it's probably as wise for us to leave it there and thank our viewers for staying with us. They've all stayed with us, which is fantastic. Probably because they're looking to see what kind of car crash it's going to end up as, I suspect. But nonetheless, thank you to everyone for staying with us. Don't forget, please, any feedback or comments, not necessarily about the technical side of things, but more about the content of the show, would be welcome. And you can do that in the comments under the show on the post. And also, of course, by our email address, propertymatterstv@gmail.com. We'll be back, internet permitting, next Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. And we look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks for watching.